to Writing Easy, the podcast that takes their act of writing, which can sometimes be not easy, and tries to make it less not easy. I'm one of your hosts, Mary Mascari.
And I'm your other host, Melissa Long.
Melissa, how do you get to Carnegie Hall? Isn't that a good joke? Get it?
No, I don't get it.
You have to there's apparently a subway, I think maybe you take a cab. I'm not sure. I've only been in New York once, and I don't think I was anywhere near Carnegie Hall, so yeah. No, practice. See, that's the thing. How do you get, because it's, okay.
Does it take practice? A map, GPS? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So what I was deftly introducing is that the theme for today's episode is we're going to talk about practicing.
Yes.
That writing is practicing and how to practice.
Yeah, and we covered this once before in a previous episode, which I will link in the description notes. But I think in that episode, we talked a lot about giving yourself space to practice and not tying the work that you're doing into something that has to be published or something that has to make money, but allowing yourself to the freedom to explore and write things that were just sort of for fun, for you to build your skills without having some kind of external reward tied to that, which is great. And I still stand by that. But I wanted to talk specifically about practicing the skill of writing. Like, what are the things that we do to improve the quality of our writing? Because I think when you look at any other artistic field or endeavor, or any athletic field or endeavor, there are practice sessions, right? There are drills and there are repetitive things that coaches teach you to do in order to improve your performance. And I don't see that in writing. I think we tell writers is just write more and you'll somehow magically get better. And that's a myth that I kind of want to put down today. Is like, that's not necessarily always the best advice.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Cause right now I'm trying to exercise more. It's my thing. There's a difference between just kind of moving around and really training, right? Like there's certain ways that you train for better fitness. So I could see how that metaphor makes a lot of sense. Just doing it the same way over and over you don't grow from that.
No, not necessarily. And I think it's also, you can have some growth, but it's accidental. It's not intentional. And that I think is the difference between practice and just repeating the same task over and over again.
So how do we practice? What's the difference between just staying level and really pushing yourself to improve while still maintaining a mindset, of positivity and freedom without attaching yourself to results?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing is to give yourself space to practice, right? To separate your productive writing time. I'm working on this novel. I'm working on the screenplay to this is time for me to practice. This is just like going to the gym, right? Like this is training. It's not about the actual end result. So I think setting yourself up to do that is the first major mental mind shift that you have to make.
That's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. Of you have you have your games and you have practice. Like if you're an athlete, I've always resisted using athletic metaphors, but in this case, it sounds like it works.
But you can use it even thinking about theater, thinking about acting, right? You have experience in acting. You have dress rehearsal, right? And you have your performances. You have rehearsal time, which is kind of more practice. It's a form of practice, right? But you also have memorizing lines, right?
Yeah.
Or you have specific training on dialect and vocal coaching and movement. And those have nothing to do necessarily with your end of the year performance that you're doing or whatever.
Yeah. It is for it, but it's not like you're going to be performing that thing you're doing.
Right.
Yeah. You do a scene study just to improve your skills. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So I think the first thing, I think we're at a detriment because as writers, you see writing coaches, but there's not really a thing as it's so vague. Anybody can call themselves a writing coach and they do a myriad of things, a lot of which I don't find helpful. I think as a writer, you have to become your own coach, which means you need a way to assess, where are you weak? Where are there opportunities for growth? And that means you need trusted peers, trusted people in your circle, whether it's an editor, a manager, a writer's group, to help you identify where the gaps are at first, because otherwise you can't figure out what skills to practice, what skills to develop.
Yeah, what you're good at and what you're not, it's hard to tell. Like, yeah, because if you're like a swimmer, you can get a swimming coach. You know, if you play any sport, you get a coach to coach you in that, you know. Even if a singer, you take voice lessons or play a musical instrument.
Yeah.
But acting coaches, these all exist. But writing coaches is kind of, yeah.
It's the only thing that, like, if I get a vocal coach for singing, they don't just listen to a demo or like one performance or song and then go, okay, here's all the things you did wrong, right? They are deliberately like giving you exercises to practice, but that's not what writing coaches do.
No, it's always based on the piece and not on your skills that you are building.
Yeah. Which is unfortunate. So let's talk about some of the things that I think you can do. I'm sure there's more. I would love for people who are listening to comment on social media, to find me, send me DMs. I want to know what your thoughts are. Maybe we'll revisit this again on a different episode. But
yeah, I'm really excited about this idea.
I think we need to transition. We need to start this movement in the writing community.
Yeah.
Of deliberate practice. And what does that
I've always felt that there is kind of the way the writing community works in terms of gaining skill and training and the way you train writers. I've always kind of felt like it was not quite right. So yeah, I'm totally with you on this.
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing that comes to mind, the thing that's most accessible to people and that they probably have done some form of, is the grammar, right? Because that's what most people, they think, oh, like I had to break down sentence structure or diagram sentences, or I had to like just practice like, when do I use this grammar rule and drill that in. And like, yes, that is somewhat helpful. Like if grammar is a weakness, then study grammar. That's fine.
And there's rules, right? And it's concrete, so that helps.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah, mostly.
I mean, you can
get those copyrighted
complex,
fights.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
But like, I will start with my most controversial idea, which is something that I have done in undergrad. And
does it involve nudity?
No, it does not. It does not involve nudity.
It's not that controversial then.
But hey, artists get to sketch nudes. I don't like, you know.
Yeah.
No, it's not that controversial, but it is about rewriting work that you admire.
Yes.
And I think that there's such a fear of plagiarism, and because we cannot separate practice from like the creative work that I'm making, we are afraid to touch anything that has already been written. And I think there's something about taking a scene and breaking it down, rewriting it, either transcribing it, because that can also help you understand what's happening. But also like, we had an activity where we took it sentence by sentence and we rewrote that sentence in sort of our world, but we used the same construction, right? So if it was a shorter sentence or a longer sentence, if it had, like we went through and followed the same rhythm of an author that we admired. And it teaches you so much about voice and tone and the choices that someone has making, and it feels a little bit like a Mad Lib. And of course you can't just take that and say, oh, look at my story I wrote, but it's great practice.
Yeah. I mean, artists do that all the time. You're constantly copying the masters, right? What an exercise is, copy this painting, and in doing so, learn their techniques, see exactly how they do it in a way that you don't get when you're just looking at it. So I can see it makes perfect sense that you would take a sentence or a paragraph or a story and copy it, either just word for word, just because that, helps you see it a different way. Or I'd love this idea of switching it out, of like, okay, here's the structure. Now use that structure yourself and see how that feels.
Right.
Really cool.
And you can really play around with it. I found it helpful for description because I was really struggling with description. I'm a fast-paced writer,
Mm-hmm.
and I jump from dialogue to action, and I don't often describe the setting and the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so to take an author who had a very vivid, detailed description about the world and be forced to slow down and think about how they did it and then recreate that, it was a challenge, but it also helped me
Mm-hmm.
understand, like, oh, here's a different way. Like, here's the different layers in which they're creating that atmosphere that I'm skipping over.
Oh, that's brilliant. I'm totally going to do that.
Yeah. I will also plug that, some people might be wondering, well, why would you just sort of transcribe something that was already written? But for specifically, I found it helpful for screenwriting because the
Mm-hmm.
format is so wonky. And a lot of us get intimidated when we sit down at a software that we're not as familiar with as Word and we start typing. And to take a script that is already written or to take a transcription from a TV show and try to turn that into a script, it allows you to really understand the structure of screenwriting without having to worry
Mm-hmm.
about creating any of the story, right? So you're just trying
Yeah.
to figure out how would they have captured this on paper, or you're like learning about, oh, this is when we use this feature, this is when we tag it as this element, this is how we do a voiceover. So it is actually a really helpful exercise for screenwriting. I would assume the same for, like, if you're writing a stage play or a graphic novel, something that's in a different
Mm-hmm.
format, like that can be a good exercise.
I've even done it just from prose as kind
Yeah.
of a warm up, to take because I know for me, after I read something, those rhythms and those words kind of stay with me. It happens, or like I'll watch a show and I'll find myself talking like them for a
Mm-hmm.
little while. I just just kind of absorb it, and so that kind of might prime you a little bit. I mean, you're not going to end up copying that author's style, but it just kind of wakes up certain things. If nothing else, just kind of gets you're moving, like gets the words showing up on a page so they're not empty. Like so. Yeah, it sounds counterintuitive, but it's certainly I've personally found it to be helpful.
It's the gateway, right? Like a lot of actors do
Yeah.
that. They have a trigger that helps them snap into character, and that can be a way that
Mm-hmm.
can help you snap into the world that you're trying to write.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're doing historical or fantasy or something that is maybe a little bit more challenging to get into the right headspace for.
Oh, that's cool. Okay, what's next? I want more.
Well, we've already talked about the second one, which has been fan fiction and spec scripts, which I'm
Yep.
lumping together, right? So borrowing somebody else's world and characters. And I think that's a really helpful practice for understanding plotting, right? And story structure, because all you have to do is figure out what is happening, what are the actions that are happening, and also mimicking voice, because you have to know enough about that author to play in their world and to write characters that sound like their characters.
Yeah, I think that helps you. If you don't want to worry about character development, and you want to just worry about story. Well, let's just use these. Like, we'll put these training wheels on, right? This is not what we're focusing on, so we're going to use canned characters, not canned, but like other existing characters, and then now all you have to worry about is the plot part or whatever, and to help you focus on one element, because there's so many things you have to do at the same time. That's one of the great things about using a fan fiction or using one of those things, is because it helps you narrow your focus a little bit.
Yeah. And that's what we want to do. We want to isolate specific things and then find ways to practice them.
Just like, if you're an athlete, at no point are you going to be like, someone's out on a field playing football. At no point are they going to lift something up and do a bicep curl with it. But those guys are doing bicep curls in the gym, right? So it's the same idea.
Exactly.
Yay. This is very cool.
Yeah.
Do you have any other ones, or should we just keep building on this as we go? I think this would be an ongoing segment of what's a cool writing exercise that we've come up with. What, your training of the week. Your writing burpees.
I love that. Writing burpees. I have one more, and this one's a little bit different. But this one is specifically for building.
Is there nudity in this one?
No. I mean,
Damn
wait,
it.
there could be.
Melissa,
There could be.
how?
You can incorporate
Okay.
nudity into this one if you really
Thank you.
desire.
Thank you.
You can do this one in the nude.
That's all I'm asking. I mean, I don't know why this is such a big deal and why everyone gets all upset. And the
Go for
neighbors
it.
and the cleaning lady.
You
and
do you.
Yeah, I just... Thank you. All right, carry on. So first, remove all your clothing, okay, and then onward.
So this one is about like building your endurance to write for longer periods of time. And I just started doing this, but I know that we talked about writing sprints, especially around NaNoWriMo and how they're helpful in increasing your word count. But I know that a lot of people who are suddenly forced to write for 2 or 3 hours or 4 hours at a time find burnout very quickly. And so how do you train yourself to be able to write when you have the opportunity to do so for longer periods of time? I think it's about doing timed drills, but not for the sake of tracking words, but just saying like, I'm going to practice writing for 10 minutes, 10-minute increments. And then I'm going to move it up the next week to 15 and then the next week to 20. I have found that sometimes I'm like, oh, I have 2 hours. I'm going to do a 30-minute block. And that 30-minute sprint feels terrifying because I'm like, I'm going to run out of stuff in 5 minutes and then I'm just going to be bored and then beating myself up because I don't know what to write or I get stuck.
Or I just stop. Yeah, there's like, never mind. This trick doesn't work.
Exactly. So it's like, how can you set up, like by setting up really small goals and consistently doing those 10-minute sessions and then growing them. I think there's a way for us to like work up to, like, I'm very used to doing a 4-hour writing block with like, you know, breaks obviously, but I can write 4 hours at a time or 6 hours. And I know people who do this and I'm like, how do you do it? I don't understand.
Yeah. And it's everything else, like endurance, right? Like you can't just go out and say, okay, time to, you know, run a 10K. You'll die, you know, you'll be in so much pain you can never do it again.
Yes.
You'll hurt yourself. It's just it doesn't. Okay, the metaphor is starting to fall apart a little bit here, but you have to build up to it, and there's that emotional aspect too. So, have you ever done the Couch to 5K program?
Yes, I have.
It sounds like the same idea, right? It's Couch to 5K is you walk and then you light jog for like a second, and then you walk and then you light jog for 2 seconds, and within I think 8 weeks, if you keep up, you're jogging a 5K, which you're jogging for I think 25 minutes straight, whether or not that's 5K. You know, that kind of depends on your speed, which for me was always pathetic, but not important. I just went. But yeah, so I think I like this idea of using these little timed intervals to build up your endurance, train your brain to understand, no, we're still going.
Exactly. And on that note, because I know we've talked about the temptation to like obsess over total word count or words hit per day, or like get really into pressuring ourselves, right? And so feeling too confined to a routine. I've started using an app. I've only used it for a week, called Clockify. It's online. It's like a free time sheet sort of software that like a lot of freelance people use to track their time and bill it to clients. But I've actually extended that from my professional work to my writing, because I'm like, I want to know how much time I'm spending on different writing tasks. And what that allows me to do is designate the writing time for like, this is going to this script, or this is going to this pitch or application, versus this is training, right? And so like I can start to see those things. And I did find out that sometimes I was saying like I was writing for 2 hours, but like when I had to start and stop the clock and then look at the totals, I was like, oh, no, I wrote for probably 40 minutes, maybe 30 minutes of that 2 hour, you know, so it's helpful to see the data. But I also like that because I was able to incorporate other aspects of the writing work that wasn't putting words on a page.
That would be very, I'm both really curious and terrified to do that for my life, to really measure how much time I spend on different things. I think I'm going to have to do that, but just like in general, but also for writing, to say, all right, like how much are you actually writing and where are you going? Oh, look, Mir, you spent 40 minutes on the name generator site. Did you really need that? No.
But maybe you did, because maybe you
Maybe I
found
did.
a great name, and that will help you better level set your expectations of how much time you need to prep.
Yeah, that's a good point. And honestly, you also cannot discount wool gathering. That is also
Right.
part of the process. So there is a certain amount of writing that's, just looking out the window, or
Yep.
sipping some tea and just kind of waiting for a thing. Like, that's definitely valid.
Still writing
kind of
time.
up to you to find what where that border is. But yeah, you can't constantly be typing words onto a page for it to count for writing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I am looking forward to doing many of this training. Many of this training? I'm a wordsmith, you see, Melissa. They flow from me just effortlessly. I'm looking forward to trying some of these little training things during the week, and I'll let you know how they go.
Yeah, I'm like I said, I'm not perfect, but I can't wait. And these are things that I'm just picking up and seeing what works and what doesn't, and hopefully I'll get better at some specific skills.
If nothing else, the mindset, I think, is really important, so I'm excited about that.
Woohoo!
Well, then I think we'll just wrap up by reminding everyone that writing is hard.
So take it easy.
I'm Mary.
And I'm Melissa.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.